Many of our customers have requested that we address CSA 2010 from the perspective of the drivers. The following presentation is intended for the drivers and for the company use. You know, when SafeStat came into my company, the only thing I saw different was the number of inspections at the scales. How's CSA 2010 going to be different? How's it going to directly affect me as a driver?
Well, one of the biggest differences between CSA 2010 and SafeStat is that with CSA 2010, all violations count. On SafeStat, only the speeding, the out-of-services, and the crashes were taken into the formulas. Another difference that goes into CSA 2010 is that the violations apply to the carrier and to the driver in some cases.
So it is true that I'm going to be scored and ranked against other drivers under this new system?
Well, yes and no. Drivers themselves are not going to be ranked, but there is going to be a score that gets tied to the driver. This score is going to be used by the government to determine whether or not the driver has to be looked at once the carrier is having an intervention, for example, a compliance review.
Intervention? That's just for the motor carrier, right?
Again, yes and no. The interventions do affect the carriers, but there is a chance that they will look at problem drivers once they find them during an intervention with the carrier.
So what's this DIR that I've heard people talking about?
The DIR is the Driver Information Resource, and that is a program that the government uses to look at drivers. So before they ever go into a motor carrier for any kind of intervention, the DIR allows that investigator or roadside inspector to look at the driver's history. Now the carrier doesn't have access to the DIR, but they are going to have some access to something else called the pre-screening program.
Wait a minute. What is this pre-screening program you just talked about?
The pre-screening program is a system that's going to allow the motor carrier to see what information is on the driver's record. It goes back 3 years for the roadside inspections and then 5 years for crashes.
That means they can just go in and look at my information at any time?
No. The carrier cannot get access to the driver's information without the driver first giving that carrier a written authorization.
Well, that's cool. So if I don't sign it, they can't get the data, but they can still hire me, right?
Well, if you don't sign it, they can't see your history, and many carriers are going to make it standard policy to go in and look at this information before they hire a driver, so it may be used by the carrier as a disqualifier if a driver doesn't sign the authorization.
Well then, so what was the information that's in this report?
5 years worth of crash data and 3 years worth of inspection data.
Well, that doesn't seem right to me for them to be able to see this information when I haven't even looked at it.
Well, the drivers do have a chance to go into that same system and request their own information, and they will be able to get it for a cheaper charge than the carrier will be paying. There is something else that I'd like to point out, is a system called Data Queue. And drivers, I want to make sure that you're aware of what Data Queue is, and if your carriers aren't using it, that you're using it as well. And it's a system that allows either the driver or the carrier to go and request a challenge on the information that's listed on your history, whether it be on your individual history or on the carrier's history. If wrong information is in there, the Data Queue system allows it to get corrected.
So are you saying that my performance at my previous employers are going to affect my scores for my new employer?
At this time, your past history is not going to affect your future carrier scores.
Well, you know, my current company gives me money for any inspection that doesn't result in an out-of-service because it helped their SafeStat scores. Will inspections with no out-of-services help the scores under CSA 2010?
Well, there's two different sides of it, and again, I'm going to have to say yes and no. The inspection that's not clean, but it doesn't have an out-of-service, it's not going to help your carrier's score. Whereas in the past, if it didn't have an out-of-service, it helped your carrier. But now, a clean inspection, which is going to have no violations, will affect the driver fitness portion of the CSA scoring system, and that's one of the 7 areas that gets looked at.
Wow, this CSA thing, it's completely different from what I was hearing on the road. I heard everybody's going to start in July, right?
Nope. It's amazing what you hear on the road. No, we had heard that states were going to start rolling into the program in July. It's going to take somewhere between July and December for all of the states to get trained and for the system to roll out. Once the state starts in the program, that's when the carriers in that state will be applicable to the new program.
So I don't have to worry about what I do now, I just have to worry about once my company starts?
No. You need to worry about what's going on right now because there's already a pilot program running for CSA 2010, so when the switch gets flipped for the state and that carrier, what's been going on for that carrier for the last 2 years is the data that's going to be in there.
Is there anything else you're hearing coming down the pike that I need to know about?
Well, eventually, FMCSA wants to tie the carrier's safety rating to the CSA score. Currently, what happens when you look at a carrier's safety rating, it's based on the last compliance review. But they want to change how that is calculated, and they want to tie it to the performance on the road, which they would do that through the CSA 2010 process. However, in order for any of that to happen, we need to have rulemaking happen. So the government can't just do that. They need to get a law passed to make it occur.
Man, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I sure appreciate you taking the time to explain this to me.
No problem. That's what we do here at H9 is we help our carriers and we get the information not only to the safety directors and upper management, but we get it to you, the drivers. And you can go to us or use your safety directors because they've got the information. We've shared it with them already and they've got some of this information as well.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care. Be safe out there, drivers.